The moment Aaron Rodgers entered the congressional chamber, every camera turned to him, but he didn't flinch. He wasn't just an NFL quarterback anymore. Today he was a witness, maybe even a whistleblower. The stakes? Everything. Sitting in front of the subcommittee on sports ethics, chaired by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rodgers looked more like a man preparing for war than for a public hearing. The microphone crackled. "Mr. Rodgers," AOC began, her tone firm but curious. "You've played over 17 seasons in the NFL. Why now?" Aaron leaned in, his voice gravelly, yet tearily controlled. "Because I've seen too much, and I can't stay silent anymore." The room froze. Reporters lowered their coffee, cameramen held their breath, and phones rose above heads, recording live. "You mean concussions?" AOC asked. Rodgers shook his head slowly. "Not just that. I'm talking about NDAs, fake medical clearances, pressures from sponsors, top play-through injuries, and a culture of silence wrapped in billions of dollars." One senator leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. "You're saying the NFL knowingly endangered players for profit?" Rodgers didn't hesitate. "Not saying, confirming. When I had my second concussion in 2013, he continued, I was ordered to get back on the field or risk being benched for good. They called it quick clearance, 15 minutes of tests, none of which were medically sound. I was signed off by a doctor who I later found out was contracted by the team's main advertiser." Gasps rippled throughout the gallery. A former NFL legend was now openly accusing the league of cover-ups. Rodgers pressed on. "I've seen teammates cry in the locker room, frightened they couldn't remember their kids' names. I've seen men in their 30s with the brain function of 80-year-olds, but there's the worst part. We were told that that's the new normal, just part of the game." AOC leaned forward. "Why didn't you come forward earlier?" Rodgers' jaw tightened. "Because I had a $200 million contract, and buried inside it were 10 pages of silence clauses. I was subtly threatened. You break them, you lose everything, your legacy, your income, your voice." A lawmaker whispered, "That's blackmail." Rodgers nodded, and it's standard practice across the franchise. "You're saying this extends beyond just one team?" AOC asked. Rodgers opened a thick folder on his desk, spreading documents before the panel. "I'd be careful assuming anything is contained. It's systemic, and I'm not alone." The hearing room was now silent, not skeptical. Silent. This wasn't just testimony. It was the unmasking of an empire. "They told us it was just a game," Rodgers said. His eyes locked on the panel, but for Representative Ocasio-Cortez flipped through the first few pages of the document Rodgers had handed her. Here was narrowed. "These emails? They're signed by team doctors, executives, even sponsors?" Rodgers nodded. "That's right. Some of the biggest names in pharmaceuticals and apparel. People you've seen in the Super Bowl, lad. They weren't just sponsoring the league. They were directing health protocols." The crowd shifted, as if physically leaning into the revelation. AO chelled up one page. "This one refers specifically to a pressure incident following a Monday Night Football game in 2015. It states that the quarterback was medically unfit to play, yet was cleared anyway for broadcast ratings. Is it about you?" Rodgers sighed. "No, that wasn't me. This might hurt to mention, but that was Andrew Luck. He wasn't the only one." Murmurs spread through the room, only to be silenced by Rodgers raising his hand. "I'm naming names not to embarrass, but to reveal a pattern. Most of us were stuck in a contractual maze. You try to speak your truth, and they'll beer you in paperwork, cut your endorsements, or make an example of you." A congressman interjected. "Mr. Rodgers, these allegations are explosive. Has the NFL responded to your claims?" Rodgers paused. He's met AOC's. "They learned about my testimony yesterday. My lawyer told me this morning that my home was visited late at night by league consultants who wanted to discuss my concerns privately. I refused. AOC's voice turned sharp. You're suggesting they intimidated you? Rodgers shrugged slightly, but this expression was stone. I'm not guessing. They've used these tactics for 20 years. They threaten with lawsuits, they control media headlines, and they hide behind patriotic narratives like "protect the game." Someone from the back of the hall shouted, "Let the man finish!" Security turned briefly, but AOC held up her hand to prevent interruption. Suddenly, another hand went higher from the audience section. An alderman stood up, slowly. He was slim, gray-bearded, with a gait that hints at 20 years limp. His voice was respite but deliberate. I can confirm what Mr. Rodgers has said. AOC blinked. Name, please? The man lifted his chin. Dr. Lawrence Weaver, former team neurologist for Green Bay Packers 2002 to 2014. A collective gasp washed through the chamber. Rodgers' eyes enlarged. Doc? Weaver nodded. I was there when Aaron was rushed through the tests. I didn't have the power to say no. Our salaries were tied to sponsorship agreements. AOC's jaw tightened. Are you willing to provide sworn testimony? Weaver stepped forward. Yes, ma'am. And I'm beginning to wonder how many players I diagnosed wrong just to save my own job. Rodgers put his hands over his face for a moment. The hearing adjourned at 3:47 p.m., but the chaos was just beginning. Outside Capitol Hill, camera crews were scrambling to post live updates. Social media was already erupting with hashtags like Rodgers reveals and NFL cover-up trending worldwide. Inside, security escorted Rodgers and Dr. Weaver through a back corridor toward a private briefing room. AOC was already on her phone, coordinating with legal staff. Are you seeing this? She said quietly to an assistant, holding up her phone. AXNN alert flashed on the homepage. NFL statement. Rodgers' testimony is false, reckless, and harmful to our game. Beneath the headline was a video clip showing NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. We take the health of our players seriously, and we intend to pursue legal action against those who make defamatory claims. Rodgers read the statement and laughed once, without joy. Of course. Dr. Weaver tilted his head. They're gonna too den yet until one of their own kids starts showing symptoms. 20 minutes later, AOC stepped in front of a podium in the press lounge. A 30-second window of silence passed before the first flashbulb went off. Today we heard something that cannot be unheard, she said firmly. This isn't about football. It's about human lives, systemic deception, and the price of silence paid in blood. She didn't take more questions. Instead, she handed Rodgers the mic. He stood briefly, his face hardened by the weight of what he'd started. I've been tackled more times than I can remember, he said, but nothing hit me harder than realizing my career, our careers, were managed by profit margins, not doctors. He looked straight at the cameras. For my former teammates watching this, you're not alone. If you've been afraid to speak, speak now. We need you. Back outside, protesters and answerees side by side. Some held signs that said, "Protect the players." Others chanted, "Shame on the league." News helicopters hovered above them all. Meanwhile, in the NFL headquarters in New York, boardroom lights burned late into the night. An emergency meeting was underway. Executives watched clips from the hearing on loop, calculating risk, P angles, and fallback options. An intern entered quietly with a report. ESPN is running an op-ed segment with 3 more former players ready to testify, live, in 15 minutes. The general counsel shook his head. It's already spreading. Someone else asked, should we discredit Rodgers? But no one answered. Back in Washington, as Rodgers left the Capitol grounds, a reporter shouted, "What do you want from this investigation?" Rodgers paused, then turned slightly over his shoulder. Accountability, he said, and a little truth, for once. Then doors shutting the waiting car him,